Not a problem at all. And I'll be posting this in the chat. Again, thank you, everybody. It's good to see you all. Um, the Restorative Justice Practices Department, we've been working hard to be able to provide professional development sessions, which we have one coming up this Friday. It's called Roots of Wellness. It's going to be facilitated by Miss Lon, who's an new addition to our team. And it's going to be about wellness, and it's going to be really awesome. There's a session at 8 a.m. and 2 p.m. Feel free to look it up in Professional Learning. But just to go start off, we sent out a survey last week. I believe it went out, or the week before. Um, and so far, we've gotten 69 responses, mostly from school counselors. But I just want to make it aware that this was just about us trying to get our direction on what it is that counselors are looking for. And from the ones who told us that majority of people have already been to some type of restorative justice training, but what people are really interested in is learning how to do virtual circles, which also encompasses learning how to do community circles. And so when I was looking at designing our deck, so that's what we're going to be focusing on. We're going to be doing two 90-minute sessions. The first session is going to be experiencing a community building circle, and then talking about the fundamentals of how to do your own community building circle. And then the second one is going to be all experiencing it and actually you doing it yourself. So it's going to be similar to how we did the 2-day RJP intro, but it's going to be packed into two 90-minute. But it's not going to be the same, because this is basically all we're going to do is basically go over step by step of what it is to do a virtual circle in what we're doing right now, and then also experiencing it, and at the same time being able to offer uh, and these different circles that we're going to be doing with the check-in circle, positive intelligence as a self-care, and being restorative with your health and well-being. So these are all going to be trainings that we're going to be offering along the way. So along with getting the training or the PD on being able to build your own community building circle in the virtual reality, we are also going to be given the opportunity to also attend these as well, that are going to be based on different types of things that we're going to be offering throughout the year. So we're really excited to be joining in and partnering with counseling and guidance and be offering this to counselors. I really feel like in this day and age, our work is more important than ever. Not that it wasn't before, but more important than ever. And we're doing our part as the RJP department to be able to offer you the tools so you can do what you need to do to help and support our families and our students and each other at your own school site. Um, if there's any other questions, um, I'm willing to answer them. I know I only have a couple minutes, but I'm willing to answer any questions that anybody may have. Um, I'm also going to, like I said, I'm going to be putting the survey into the chat, because the more participants that we get into the survey, the better. So like I said, this work that we're doing is organic. We want to be able to form it and mold it into what it is that you counselors need, specifically for counselors. So yeah, thank you again for allowing me to be here. I'm looking forward to seeing you all at our PDs, and hopefully you'll be able to join us on this Friday at our first PD on Roots of Wellness. That's going to be awesome.
Okay.
Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you so much, Mario. It was great seeing you.
Yeah, you too as well. Tell Winston I said what's up.
I will. Okay, so Jason, if you would like to. Great, thank you. So next, November, I'm not sure if all of us are aware, but actually this week is Transgender Awareness Week. It is November 13th through 19th, so we are in middle of it. So we have invited Ebony Weathers, our program manager for youth advocacy, to come and share with us different ways of how we could support our transgender youth.
Hey, I'm here. I'm going to pop in the chat a link to the slide deck that we're going to use. And can I just roll?
Yes, Jason will have your back.
All right. Can I share? There we go. How's everybody doing? I see some familiar faces in the crowd. There's Nicole. Nicole, I have an email.
I have a question for you, Bonnie, after.
Yes. Let's hear it.
I will send you option 1, the form. The thing that I was like, like option 1, you ask a student to sign it, put their name and sign it. The fact that we are online learning, I will send you the form, but it's okay to change on the Power School name change.
Yes.
Okay, even though even though the student didn't sign it.
Yes, we're gonna actually get the name change. I wanted to spend a lot of time on that, and I promise I didn't pay Nicole to bring that question up. But we're gonna get there because I think that's probably what a lot of folks are wanting some more information on. Okay. So if you haven't been in any of my PDs or workshops, this is interactive. Please unmute, jump in. This is for you. I'm just trying to bring some stuff that our department's working on, but I definitely want your input and feedback and questions. So interrupt me at any time, ask questions, get clarification, because that's what we're here for. And they said I have about an hour and a half with you all today, or more or less. So here we go. This is me. For those of you who don't know me yet, my name is Ebony Weathers. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am the program manager of the Youth Advocacy Department, which includes the LGBTQIA+ education and advocacy program. I am a mom, I'm a wife, so I put some pictures in here because this is my new roommates and office partners are now these people. And I'm sure a lot of you understand and are working side by side with your families right now, for better or for worse. In my case, it's mostly a nightmare. So with that, my 7-year-old is currently doing 2nd grade, and if you hear something, it's fine, everything's fine. But as Eddie said, this is Transgender Awareness Week, and this was a great opportunity that was provided by your program manager. So I just wanted to say thank you. Super grateful to be having this chance to speak with everyone. But ultimately, this is a week to build awareness for yourselves, for your staff, for your students around transgender identities, but also to commit to ending the transphobia and gender-based violence that is occurring across the country in our schools. And we're going to look at some data today. GLSEN just released their newest school climate survey. So there is some new data. If you click on this link that I posted in the chat, you'll get this presentation, and you should be able to click on these underlined links here to get the larger resource that I'm pulling from today. But according to that survey, 84% of transgender students reported feeling unsafe at school because of their gender. And that is really why we're here. We're doing this work so we can build understanding around what is transgender identity and what can we do actively to support those students, because this is not data that we love to see. This Awareness Week ends on November 20th with Transgender Day of Remembrance. I'm not sure why there's a question mark there, my bad. But this is a day where we really look at and memorialize folks who have been killed, murdered as a result of transphobia across the country. And I'm going to share with you some resources in terms of lesson plans or ideas on how to activate students around Trans Awareness Week and Trans Day of Remembrance. The first one, this image is clickable and it will take you to the 2-page document. But this site, specifically GLSEN, offers a lot of great resources. This one is the Trans Action Kit. So it gives some ideas around what you can actually do at your site, virtually or in person, around Transgender Awareness Week and Trans Day of Remembrance. This is the Trans Youth, or the GLSEN Youth Council, and this is the specific trans group of that youth council. So GLSEN, which is the national organization, gets students on their board who inform their decisions and the tools and resources they create and put out. And I wanted to share this response specifically. It was a group of youth talking about what teachers can do when they find out about how trans students are feeling on their sites and just about trans identities in general. And I thought these two were specifically really powerful. So the first one says, talk about specific deaths and the epidemic in a respectful manner, but make sure not to put trans students on the spot if that's not something they want. And Darrell said, don't tokenize trans folks to be the voice of representation for the trans community, but provide a safe outlet where we can discuss the stuff that's happening. Don't put the emotional labor on trans folks to educate everyone else. So these comments are taken from the folks you see in the picture over there from GLSEN's Youth Council. And I thought that those were especially appropriate to kind of frame the work that we're doing. I'm gonna pause and see if anybody has any questions or feedback so far. Don't be scared. No.
Well, Ebony, I'll just quickly say, representing the Black community, that's a lot of times the same thing when things are concerning Black community. Don't look necessarily towards the one Black or the two Blacks in the class, because they don't necessarily represent everyone involved.
Absolutely.
Or the Black community.
We see that a lot. I mean, especially with populations that are underrepresented in our classrooms or in our teaching staff or counseling staff. It's like you want to tokenize that one person and say, you know, stand up for everyone else. And it really puts a lot of the labor, the physical labor to do the activism, the emotional labor. And it's also a misrepresentation because just like everybody else, trans people are individual, and we encourage our students to speak for themselves and not necessarily be representatives. So thank you for bringing that up. Tell wifey I said hello, I miss her. I'm gonna share this quick video. It's all trans youth, so actual students. And then we're gonna jump in and kind of take it back just to make sure everybody's clear on terminology and really understanding what the transgender identity is all about. So as I'm playing this, if you have any comments or questions that are coming up, please throw them in the chat. And I think Jason or Eddie will lift those so that we can kind of chat about those if there's anything you want to dig into a bit deeper.
Not every trans person is the same, and not every trans person looks the same. When we represent trans people, we want to show every beautiful part of our community. In my school, we seem to have a problem where administration is only listening to the struggles of white trans students, and it is not listening to the struggles of trans students of color. And I cannot stress enough that it is important to identify the intersections between class and race and gender identity and listen to the voices that are often being marginalized and erased within your school community and the entire country. Personally, I've had experiences where teachers assumed that their classroom was full of heterosexual cisgender students, and that speaking about LGBT people is some sort of other or some hypothetical situation. I think a big thing is just kind of weaving in representation wherever you can. For example, like if you're teaching math class, you can have problem, instead of saying Mr. and Mrs. Smith, you can throw in some diversity and say Mr. and Mr. Smith or Mrs. and Mrs. Smith, or even use a gender neutral term. So that's a big thing, just fitting in diversity wherever you can. I really believe that schools need to be open to listening to the voices of trans students of color within your schools and hearing what they need, because everyone is going to need something different, and the most important thing is to listen and hear these stories, hear these experiences, and hear what these people need. An all-gender bathroom is basically like a big sign to all LGBT students that differences are accepted. All-gender bathrooms don't exist just to accommodate trans people either. That's a misbelief. All-gender bathrooms are encouraging everybody is treated the same and not grouped according to how you may look or how you may express yourself. So if I see an all-gender bathroom, I immediately know that I'm accepted and that I'm in a safe place. And again, if you're at school, you need that safe place to be able to learn and to grow and to develop socially.
All right. Anything from the chat? I'm on shared screen and hopefully the toggle, but anything come up in the chat?
Yeah. There was a question, and it was, is there any idea why trans awareness is only for a week?
Hey, Ebony, there's an issue with your microphone. We can't hear you.
I wasn't sure if it was just me, so I didn't say anything because I was like, could be mine.
Nope, still no.
A neutral.
Out and come back in.
Okay, you're getting better.
Is it better
I
now?
heard that.
What if I hold it right here on my mouth?
Oh yeah, we hear you.
Good. Yes. Okay. If it's not good, just somebody shout it out for me, all right?
I can barely hear you and I have my volume at 100%.
Okay, let me log out and log back in. I'll be super quick.
Okay.
Does anybody know any jokes?
Yeah, Ebony walked into a bar and nobody could hear her.
Oh, I'm so proud of you, Eddie.
What rhymes with orange?
What?
What?
Orange.
Nothing.
Okay, what about now?
The gender neutral for like a Mr. and Mrs. is the MX.
Can you all hear me?
What is that one?
How do you pronounce it?
MX.
Hello, hello.
You're very low still, Ebony.
Damn it. Okay.
That's
You
better.
heard that.
Yeah, I can hear you.
I can hear you fine.
Okay, so I'm just gonna keep talking and you can hear me so far. Sweet. I came in on the gender neutral pronouns or monikers for adults and educators. MX is one that I heard, absolutely. That is a gender neutral term that educators have used to replace Miss, Mrs, or Mr, and it's pronounced mix.
Oh, mix.
Mix. Anything else on this? Feel free to unmute and shout it out.
There's a question, do we have an initiative for all schools in SDUSD to have trans bathrooms soon?
That has been an initiative, and that's something that my predecessor, Sophia, was working with facilities on to ensure that every site had, because every site should already have a gender neutral restroom in the nurse's office, but our goal is to, as we're doing new construction, to include mostly gender neutral restrooms. There's been some struggle to convert restrooms that are existing because there are certain ratios that the facilities department is tied to contractually in terms of how many students are there and how many teacher restrooms are available based on the percentage and number of teachers at that site. So that's definitely something we're working on, but there are like all these kind of behind the scenes things that facilities has to ensure in place as well.
And what about in like the high school and middle school with the showers and changing? Is that also done through the nurse's office?
Can you clarify a little bit more for transgender students? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, transgender students.
So
like I had a student, go ahead.
Well, for all of our students, they have the option to use whatever restroom they align with. And so you don't have to say, oh, I'm trans, so I'm going to choose to use this. You can use the restroom or the locker room that aligns with your gender identity and the one that you consistently express at school. For some of our students, they feel more comfortable choosing the male or female locker rooms. And for some of them, that's not at all comfortable or safe. And so they use the nurse's room or a gender neutral single stall restroom.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Can you address, I have several students that let's just example is going to be they identify as a male or as a female, and they're not comfortable with the trans kids coming into their locker room to say. How do you address that? And if you give more, like, how do you deal with that?
Sure. So I think everybody has the right to feel safe in the restroom or the locker room. And I think that the difference between a trans student and a cisgender student, or a student whose gender identity aligns with the sex that they were assigned at birth. So for me, for example, as a cisgender woman, I was assigned female at birth and I identify as a female. That's what cisgender is. And that's what makes up most of our student body. For those students, it is not unsafe for them to be in a locker room or a restroom. Whereas for a lot of our transgender students, it is beyond discomfort and it is unsafe for them physically and emotionally to have to choose one of those restrooms or locker rooms that does not align with their gender identity. So it might be uncomfortable for some of the cisgender students, but if that's the case, I would recommend that those students then go to the nurse's restroom or the nurse's room to change at locker room time or use that restroom facility. Because our goal is to make sure students are safe, and if it's uncomfortable for them to be changing with a trans student, then the responsibility is for them to leave. Does that clarify? Is that getting it?
In our school, we have, we give them the opportunity, in addition to the nurse's office and all that, we bought some portable dressing rooms to put on each side. So if they still want to be, if they're identifying as male, they can still go over there, but they might feel more comfortable in the dressing room. So they go there. And I think we have, I want to say we have a portable shower on each side too, or something like that.
I love that. And I think the key takeaway is about that conversation between safety and comfort, right? And we never want to put the responsibility on the student. If we have a transgender student who identifies as male and wants to use the male locker room and other people are uncomfortable with that person being there, it's not on that male transgender student to have to find another place. It's up to the people who can't accept that student into the locker room that should find the other place. It's their responsibility, if they're not feeling comfortable with it, to take action. And we're not going to place that on the trans student because other people aren't accepting. So thank you, Phyllis, for sharing. That's an awesome workaround. I'm definitely interested in what that would look like, and sharing that out, because I think that's a great alternative for both, if there's somebody who feels uncomfortable or unsafe as an alternative.
So I wanted to comment, I'm at CPMA and we have a lot of theatrical productions where kids are changing in and out of costumes, and these issues have come up in those respects. But I wanted to comment about how that plays out at our site. None of our kids are actually getting completely nude in order to, costume up. So changing in the changing room, as far as our theater is concerned, doesn't become an aspect other than the sensitivity issue from one side or the other. As far as the locker rooms go, I deal with a lot of boys who may be shy in changing just as much as a transgender student might feel uncomfortable changing. And so in those respects, not to discriminate against them, but to provide them an alternative, is that they might wear their PE clothes underneath clothes so they're not actually revealed when they take off their street clothes. But we do have options, alternative safe places on campus that have been provided by allies to allow kids to change in addition to the nurse's office.
I love that. And again, like anytime we can offer a solution that's not saying, you as the trans student need to do something different, but here are some options for all students, just so that everybody feels comfortable and safe. I think anytime we can create alternatives for all of the students, that's best practices. So thank you for sharing that one as well. I am like 7 minutes away from the end of my time, but if you click that link that I shared in the chat, this whole presentation's there along with all of the resources. I wanted to hit two more things before I have to go, and also try to give some time for some more questions. But I just wanted to make sure that the terminology and the language was clear. So this is a pretty simple way of kind of looking at some of the definitions that we've talked about today. Transgender is a term for anybody whose gender identity does not match their gender or sex that was assigned at birth. And below that, you'll see some examples of transgender identities. So trans men, trans women, two-spirit, and third gender. These are all terms that people use to refer to transgender identities. It's not an exhaustive list. Over on the right, cisgender, what we talked about just a bit ago, is a term for somebody who exclusively identifies as their sex assigned at birth. So again, that's most people in the world. That is me, that's somebody who's assigned female and identifies as female, or somebody who's assigned male and identifies as male. And then in the middle, you'll see what's kind of a gray area, or gender non-conforming. This is a term for anyone who challenges this binary belief of male and female. It often fits under the transgender umbrella, but I also identify in this category. So I would identify as like a masculine or butchy woman. I still identify as a woman, but my presentation or my expression more resembles what society considers to be masculine or male. But they're feminine men, androgynous people, drag queens, drag kings, those people would all fit in that center section. There's one more thing to look at in terms of like how we qualify and quantify these things. And this is really just to separate the misconception that our gender identity is also tied to our sexual orientation, which is inaccurate. So this is a really great visual representation of our sex assigned at birth over with the clipboard. That's what a doctor or a professional labels you based on a visual, you know, whether it's your genitalia, usually it's male, female, or intersex. Attribution is how others perceive you based on what you wear, how you speak, the way you walk. Expression is how you choose to display your gender, the clothes that you wear, the jewelry that you choose, your hair. And then in the middle is gender identity, and that's how you identify yourself with gender. So this is another really great visual I wish we had more time to get into, but I got 4 minutes left, and I'm going to get to name changes, and then I'm going to give you all a chance to shout out any questions you have. Please check out some of this stuff because the numbers are, I mean, really important to look at why we're doing this work and some best practices and actually getting it done. One of those practices is the name change, and that's what I'm going to jump to now. And Nicole had brought this up right at the beginning. But we offer our students, and this is not just for trans students, but that's mostly who's utilizing the services, the opportunity to change their preferred name and their preferred gender within PowerSchool. We have created an online version of that so that students can make that change online, and their Google Classroom, their Zoom accounts will all reflect their preferred gender identity and their preferred names. We have students who are missing tons of class because they know that when they log in, they're going to be outed with their dead name on Zoom or in Google Classroom. So we're trying to make it really quick and easy. So these here are linked to 2 versions of the name change form. Students don't have to sign anything. Parents don't have to sign anything. It's all included in there. The option 1 change happens at the school site. So at this point, we don't even need to get anything from the school site to make that option 1 change. It's just a change for teacher rosters. But the option 2 change we do need, because in order to impact those systems I mentioned, we need to go through IT for that process. So if you have an option 1, you can track it at your site. You don't have to send us anything at all. All you do is go in and update the preferred name in box 4 in PowerSchool, field 4. For the option 2, you can use this form here, super quick and easy. It's linked here for you. You can share it out, and we'll collect it and make the change that day. So I've got 2 minutes left for questions, comments.
Do you want us to read off the comments prior to?
Sure, if you have anything, I can open it up now since I'm not presenting.
So we had one from Dina, good feedback that all gender bathrooms are a sign of being welcome. Sometimes in the past, I felt that students felt it was stigmatizing and some refused to go to the restroom. And then we have It needs to be recognized at elementary as well. I have students as young as second grade that do not identify as male or female.
Absolutely. Gender identity is formed, around 3 to 5 years old. So we are having a lot more students who are feeling free enough to come out as non-binary or transgender in kindergarten, first grade. We find that, like, functionally, a lot of the spaces in kindergarten and first grade are more inclusive. We have a lot of single stall gender neutral restrooms at that age, especially in kinder. So that's been a benefit, but this starts young. And so the more that we can shift our mindset and know what's out there to support those students, I think the better outcomes we're going to have.
And then
safe is important. I think that's good.
A question.
Yes.
I work with a lot of financial aid application. And so for the FAFSA, we were instructed that student, even for trans student, they cannot put down the sex that they, or even not with trans, they can't put down the sex that they identify with. They have to put down the sex they will assign at birth.
Right.
And so that creates some problem for trans. For example, if it was a boy, now is a girl. But if they have to be forced to put down male on one of the question, then they have to fill out the selective service question in order for them to receive federal funding. So do you know if there's any movement or policy to work with the federal office in terms of that particular question?
I don't. That's beyond my really sphere of influence. It's definite. I mean, for even the option 2 name change, which is the more comprehensive one, it covers a lot of things, but we still can't touch things like official transcripts. We can't change names for state testing. So anything that's beyond our district in terms of regulation and control, legal documents, we have to use the legal name and gender of that student. So the best we can do is offer access to legal name change support for families. It is a time-intensive and cost-intensive process, but that's the only thing right now in terms of legal documentation. That's the only way that we can change name and gender. So there are some workarounds, when we have forms like that. As much as we can, we try to, like, students don't even want to write their dead names or speak their dead names sometimes. So as the adult, I can write it on forms for them, because even just doing that for some of our trans students can be traumatic. So to type in the name for them or to write the name down, their legal name down for them, can be helpful. But at this point, it has to be the legal name on legal documentation.
I have a question, actually 2 questions and a comment, if I can interrupt.
Sure,
I'm sorry, I'm Adria Bogart, and I am the counselor for STARS elementary and middle school students.
Awesome.
And Ebony, you were so helpful with us when we had a student at one of our middle schools last year. And that's why I have these 2 questions. So the first question is that we had a student who went from male to female, female to male. And we did a whole coming out thing with his classmates, and he was fine. The classmates were fine. But the bus manifest didn't identify the preferred name. And there were always bus driver substitutes. So every time he would get on the bus, he was essentially outed, because they would call attendants and say his birth name out loud. So, and then what we found out is that transportation and Power School don't connect, and they don't talk to each other. So I just wondered if that was an issue that had been resolved, or if that's still a thing to be aware of.
That is still a thing to be aware of. It hasn't been resolved.
Okay.
And we're finding, and I received your email, so things like that, the more feedback that we get from people of like, oh, it's not happening here. One of those places being like Zoom for pronouns. There's not a pronoun field in Zoom, and so it's really difficult unless you're like hijacking another field, like the last name field, and just throwing it on there,
right?
Which is what you'll see I've done. Is it's kind of hard to get Power School to speak to all of the other systems that student information pulls from. And we'll find these spots based on the feedback that we hear, and transportation has been one of them. But keep sending them, because we're working on finding connections to all of those things, even if it's a manual. We have to go in at the beginning of every year to input the information so that it's most affirming for that student. And that's what we're going to be doing with transportation, is it's got to be that manual share, versus a lot of the other systems that just kind of speak to Power School and can pull from it directly.
Right. Okay. So just to know that we had to contact transportation at least 3 times before they were, I mean, they were open to it and they were amenable, but it just didn't get past, filtered down to the substitutes necessarily. So it did cause some problems for our student. My other question was that we had the parent come in and say that, he was writing his preferred name on his schoolwork, and we were submitting those as IEP samples, work samples. But when the mom needed to go to Medi-Cal or to any of the agencies where she would receive disability payments, they had a disconnect. And so she was requesting, Mom, that we have him write his birth name on his classwork. And that became, as you can probably imagine, kind of a sticky issue. And so what we did was we just had him write his preferred name, and then as the case manager would accumulate the work samples, he would write a letter that said that this person is actually by birth this person. And Mom was unhappy with it, but I wondered if you had encountered any of that kind of situation before. I know you mentioned outside agencies, but if you had a suggestion about how to handle that.
I haven't heard of that, and I'm curious, like, what kind of Medi-Cal is looking at work samples or the IEP, because I've never heard of that.
I know, I did too.
I think that that's a great solution. I would never, we never want to ask that student to say like, hey, we really, unless it's absolutely necessary, like with a legal document. It sounds like if there's a workaround in this case where somebody else can go in after and put this student is also known as this student, or even attaching the name change form to it to give the context. But yeah, I like the way that you're, still honoring the student's preferred name, allowing them to identify themselves as such, and the staff is taking on the responsibility of showing the connection between these 2 names as the one person. So
it seemed reasonable, but Mom wasn't happy with it.
Well, keep rocking with it, and whoever, just send them to me.
Okay, good to know. You are good. And then my last comment was that the team, the student did have an IEP. The team got together and suggested that I meet with the student a couple times a week, just for 10, 15 minutes, to coach them on the fact that reality is that your birth name is this, even though your preferred name is this, and the perspective of people will be that you are a girl or you are a boy. And so we had to somehow help him kind of integrate. And so it was just a script that we all taught him as a staff. Hello, my name is my preferred name is so-and-so. My birth name is blah, blah, blah. And so that became kind of the script that we taught him, as a way to kind of integrate the birth self and the preferred self. It was a kind of complicated, but it seemed to really help him, I think, become less, it was less of a stigma in his own mind. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think I would say that that's like definitely an option, but for some students that's absolutely, they will never want to speak their dead name. Or
to reintegrate, right.
So it's all like, everybody is an individual, and working with students to figure out what's most comfortable for you. We have the gender support plan that I think I shared with you all when we met.
Yes.
That's linked on the presentation that I shared today in the chat.
Yes.
That out as another resource for like getting students to kind of feel safer at school by including the adults and how do we need to proceed. I'm way over time. I don't want to
I do have one question that I would like to have asked because it's from the chat.
Yeah.
And it's, do parents generally accept students changing their names if they are under 18?
It ranges. I mean, initially we had students have to get a parent permission for the option 2. And we made that a practice because with option 2 name changes, things that go home from the school site will have the student's preferred name on it. And once that happens, we didn't want it to be a safety issue for that student. Dad doesn't know, He finds out because he sees this piece of mail and now just goes off. Now with the online version, it makes it really difficult for those students to do the name change and have a parent signature, having to print things out and mail things in. So we've done it digitally, but we've made that part of one of 3 alerts that we want to make sure students are aware that this is going to happen. Are you still going to be safe? If so, then proceed. And we're letting the students determine that. Most parents are maybe not entirely supportive, but they understand it and they're going to go ahead and do it. But we also have those parents that are reaching out to schools saying, please do not call my child by that name. They're kind of delusional right now, and we don't want to honor whatever craziness is happening for them. So just stick with their birth name, even though they're asking you to do something different. And we've responded to parents like that as well. In that response, saying it is absolutely our responsibility to honor the request of the student and not the request of the parent to deny the student the right to their identity.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Ebony. And
Sorry.
as you stated, you are over your time.
It's not my fault.
No, but thank you so much for such a great presentation. It was very much needed and appreciated. And if people do have any further questions, would you like for the department to collect it and send it over, or are they free to contact you?
Contact me. I just threw my email in the chat, set up I am happy to come back only if you give me more time. Check out all the documents in the presentation I sent and whatever you need. I'm happy to come back, or you can reach out to me one-on-one.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ebony.
Out, hang in there, be safe, stay sane. Much love.
Thanks. All right, so up next, we have our guest speaker speaking about 504s and individualized student health plans. Sue Delira, you have the floor. Sue, are you here?
Sorry, I was muted. Hi, thank you. I wanted to be able to share my screen if I could, so I could put up my PowerPoint. There we go. Is everyone able to see that?
Yes.
Great. So yes, I'm Sue Delira, and I am one of the nurse cluster coordinators in the district, and I support the schools in the Claremont, Mission Bay, and Point Loma areas. I'm very thankful to be here today. I just wanted to start with this: alone we can do so little, together we can do so much. I believe that we all know the truth in that quote by Helen Keller. And I am very grateful for Sharon inviting me to come today. I feel the more that nurses and counselors can work together, the better the outcomes we're going to have for our students. I just want to make a few introductions. There are also the lead nurses here attending today, just so you know who they are when you're working with your site nurses. We are all available for consultation to you. Susan Barndollar is the Executive Director of Nursing and Wellness. Jenny Alfonso is one of our resource nurses. And we have seven cluster coordinators like myself, and we're divided geographically, so I've listed them all there. So you'll know which one of those nurses are supporting your schools, and you can reach out to any of us anytime. Just for a quick overview of what we're going to discuss today, we're going to start with 504, and I know you guys are all experts on that, but just a basic overview, key points, and really what that school nurse role is. We're going to talk about the Individualized School Healthcare Plan, or the ISHP. Again, an overview and key points. And then I have just some samples to go over: an ISHP versus a 504 plan, what some accommodations would look like for students with health conditions, what an ISHP looks like. And then here's my contact information. You are welcome to contact me anytime. That's my personal cell phone as well. So just a basic description of what is an ISHP. So it's basically a plan that provides safe and appropriate care for students that have special health care needs. Whereas the 504 is really about providing support and removing barriers for educational access for students that have disabilities. What they do. The ISHP is going to provide management of students with those chronic health problems in the school setting. That 504 again is providing equal access to education for students with disabilities. What law applies? So the development of ISHPs is the nurse's responsibility. It is based on standards of care and it is regulated by state nurse practice acts. This is something that cannot be delegated to unlicensed individuals. Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 is a federal civil rights law. And this is about stopping discrimination against people that have disabilities. So who's eligible? ISHPs are for students that have healthcare issues and typically those that have complex issues that require health services on a daily basis, or they have an illness that could result in a health crisis or emergency. 504 determination eligibility is based on a person that has a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits a major life activity, or they have record of that impairment, or they're regarded as someone with that impairment. Who creates it? So the ISHP is created and developed by the school nurse using the nursing process, but it's usually done in collaboration with families and healthcare providers, also medical orders, and many times the student. As you all know, the 504 plan, you guys are usually the coordinators of those, and then included on that would be people that are familiar with that child who also understand how to evaluate data and what service options are available for that child. So that's when you bring in the gen ed and special ed teachers, the principal, and the school nurse, sometimes the school psychologist as well. So what's in it? The ISHP is going to be that detailed plan to coordinate the management of that student's health condition at school. So it's basically that who, what, where, when, why, and how we're going to do it. How's that care going to be provided? Where the 504 plan is looking more at specific accommodations, supports, and services to the child, as well as the names of who's going to provide those services. Consent. An ISHP does not require parental consent. If a student has a known health condition and we have medical orders to provide care and treat that on campus, we're going to make a plan of care. We always send it home and hoping that we can create those in collaboration with the parents, and the parents will sign that plan and return it. But sometimes they don't. Sometimes we send it home, we never get it back. But that doesn't mean that we're not going to follow that plan and have it in place. Whereas a 504 does require that parental consent. How often is it reviewed and revised? So the ISHP is a very flexible and fluid document, and it can change as the student's needs change. So it could change 10 times in a school year. Or it could not change at all, and then it just needs to be updated annually. The 504 plan, as you all know, is reviewed and reevaluated yearly anytime the child has a change of placement or a change of school, if there needs to be change of service, or just the parents could request it, or just when the team feels it's needed. So funding and cost, and of course we're a public school system, so there's no cost to students for either one of these services. But I think what's important to know is the states don't receive any extra funding for students that have 504 plans. In fact, the federal government could take away funding from schools if they don't meet the legal duty to service kids that have disabilities. Just the key points for the individualized healthcare plans is, again, it's that guiding document for delivery of student-specific healthcare, providing for symptom and treatment of the condition. It's a documentation and plan also of how emergency care will be provided in the school setting. It's truly the standard of care for nurses, and it's our nursing process in action. It's a great tool for communication and continuity and consistency of care. We have nurses in health office providing care. We have health techs. We have registry nurses that come in and help, especially with our diabetics at lunchtime. A lot of our school clerks are helping out. We have teachers that are participating as well. So it keeps us all on the same page, doing the same thing for the student. And that also promotes our ability to collaborate with each other. Again, it's a very flexible and fluid document. It does not require a formal meeting to revise and update. And we should always have it included if a student has a 504 plan or an IEP. So section 504, some key points just to go over again. Students can be eligible even if their disability does not limit learning. Rather than considering only how an impairment affects a student's ability to learn, schools also have to consider how that impairment affects a major life activity of that student. Students that earn good grades and have a disability can be eligible for Section 504 services, and I think this is where a lot of people get hung up. But this is because the student's impairment may substantially limit a major life activity, and that is regardless if they're performing well academically or not. And when 504 teams rely on students' grades or their GPA, they tend to make wrong assumptions and inappropriate determinations for 504 eligibility. Physical or mental impairments expected to have a duration of 6 months or less are considered transitory and not within the definition of having a disability. Now this can be a little bit gray, and I'll just bring up to me the classic example, and this is when a student has had a concussion. So the typical kid will have a concussion and they'll recover within 7 to 10 days. They'll be able to return to learn, return to play, and be on their own. But that's not always the case. Sometimes those symptoms will linger and the child is not able to return to learn. And they're not able to do their homework, take tests, and do things. And the teachers are frustrated and the kids need accommodations, and you're thinking this isn't really a disability because it's something that's going to heal, they're going to get better. Well, with post-concussion syndromes, they can last, 3 months to a year or more. So this is when sometimes the team is really going to have to consider and look at the individual student. And the nurse, and as well as the doctor probably providing additional information will help you in determining that eligibility. So you may say, yes, this student is not progressing. We need to do a 504. You put all these accommodations in place, and lo and behold, 4 months later, the child, is better, which would be great. And it's just that sometimes you don't know when that end date's going to be. And a concussion is kind of that classic example. So just be open to that and be willing to look at that individually. Episodic impairments are those that occur periodically or are in remission. They're considered a disability if when they're in their active phase, it would substantially limit a major life activity. So think of the student with diabetes, think of the student with severe anaphylaxis, students with asthma. So they occur periodically, but when they occur, they are going to substantially limit that major life activity. Again, 504s are about addressing access to education. Students' individual needs must be met as adequately as students without disabilities. That's the benchmark. And separate is not equal. So we cannot isolate, we can't exclude, we can't give something different when we think about class parties. It's a big thing to keep in the forefront. So what is your school nurse colleague's role with Section 504s? So they can assist in identifying students who may need health-related services and accommodations. They are going to assess and identify students' functional and physical health statuses. They're the ones that are going to develop those ISHPs based on their nursing assessment and the medical orders that they have for the child. They can recommend health-related accommodations or services required for that student to be able to access the education program. They can help identify the health-related barriers to learning. They can provide in-service and training for your teachers and staff, especially regarding the individual health needs of the students. Your nurses are the ones that train all the staff to provide the specialized healthcare procedures that the students will need during the day. They can participate in the transitioning planning, as well as evaluating the effectiveness of that 504 plan. So is every student that has an ISHP eligible for Section 504 services? The answer is no. Again, it's going to be very individualized. And the converse of that, does every student that has a 504 require an ISHP? And the answer again is no. So I'm going to show some examples of conditions that would, do these typically require an ISHP? And again, this is just generalized, you know, across the board. Sometimes these students do have ISHPs, but generally speaking, with someone with ASD, no. Someone with attention deficit disorder, no. Auditory processing, no. Physical impairment, again, it would depend on the type and the severity. But these are conditions that typically require classroom accommodation to mitigate their learning disabilities. Do these health conditions typically require consideration for eligibility for Section 504 services? And the answer would be yes. Again, is it at the degree that it is substantially limiting a major life activity? Again, that is the question that would have to be determined by the team. Now we have these conditions. Do they typically require an ISHP? So type 1 diabetes, absolutely. We have, even if the student is in high school and completely independent in their care, they're still going to have an ISHP. It'll look different from the kindergartner who is dependent on all of their care, but they would both have it. Seizure disorder. We typically always have a seizure action plan for our students that have seizure disorders. Sometimes students have what's called a seizure history, and then that's different. It's maybe they had a seizure due to a fever when they were 2 years old, never took medicine, haven't had a seizure ever since. It's been over 10 years. We're not going to have a seizure action plan on that child. Anaphylaxis, if the students have EpiPens, we're going to have an emergency healthcare plan for them in the school setting. And again, anxiety is going to depend on the type and the severity. And do these conditions typically require consideration for a 504? And again, it's going to be yes for all of them. So when we look at accommodations and we're looking at the 504, we want to consider what are the changes that will remove barriers? What is going to provide this student with equal access to their learning and education? what can we do to assist the student to work around the challenges that they have? And I think that it's important to know, oops, I didn't mean to do that. It's important to know that they do not change what a student is expected to know or learn, and they do not lower expectations. So when we're making those accommodations in a 504, we don't want to lower expectations. So I put together a bunch of samples of 504 accommodations that a 504 team could consider for a student with type 1 diabetes. I personally have a bias for type 1 diabetes students. I feel that they all would fall under the qualifying conditions to have an ISHP as well as a 504, because they definitely have a condition that is going to substantially impact a major life activity. So here's one that talks the area of difficulty, and I know this is where it can get a little confusing, is, you know, what do we put for area of difficulty, because you have all those choices to make. And sometimes what I try to suggest is look at what the accommodation is that the child needs, and then look at what is most related in terms of that area of difficulty to that accommodation. So for example, in this one, if a student's not feeling well, they need to leave class, that student will need to be accompanied by an adult escort at all times, or the school nurse or a designated trained staff member will go to the student. So again, when we look at 504s, would this be appropriate for a high school student? No. If we have a typically developmentally functioning adolescent in high school, they're not going to need this accommodation. So your 504 plans, the ISHPs, are going to look different for that kinder, that middle school, and that high school student. But this would be appropriate for a kindergartner. And so they're needing that escort to the health office because they're not feeling well. We're not sure if it's diabetes related, that their blood sugar is out of a normal range, or they could be sick with something else. But we're going to assume that it's going to be related to the diabetes because we're going to play it safe. We're going to err on the side of safety. So what can happen if a blood sugar drops too low is it could result in collapse and unconsciousness. And so we wouldn't want a kinder trying to find their way to a health office by themselves, who don't really typically know their bodies well and can recognize all those symptoms. Sometimes they just know they don't feel good, and then collapse and be laying on a floor unnoticed for a long period of time. So we need someone to go to them. So for me, the area of difficulty is they can't care for themselves. We need to get them care. One of the counselors was using this, and one of the parents came back and said, well, isn't the area of difficulty walking? And I just don't see it that way. And again, this is something the team can discuss, but to me, the walking isn't the issue here. The issue with the area of difficulty is the child can't care for himself. It's true, the child may along the way not be able to walk, and that may be a result of not being able to care for themselves. But I would see area of difficulty of walking being more so if you had a student that maybe had, poor muscle tone. Maybe they had mild cerebral palsy or something, and they're going to need access to a wheelchair if they go on field trips that are long distance. Maybe it's an accommodation like that. So I see that more, and that would be directly related to walking. So again, these are things that your team can talk about, but I think if you start with the accommodation first, and then from there, you can determine that area of difficulty more specifically. So I put a bunch in here just so you guys can have access to this PowerPoint, and it would just give you, ideas of different accommodations to consider as a team. This one talks about concentrating. A student may need additional time. The typical time that is given is up to one time that allotted to non-accommodated students. That's kind of the average. You as a team may decide a child needs more or less. Here was one where if a child's going to take any type of standardized testing, they're going to check their blood sugar before. If it's out of range, then they're going to be allowed to take that test at another time without penalty. More appropriate for an older student versus a kindergartner who may not need that. Let's see. Here's one, learning. So a teacher to provide academic support for any critical concepts or information missed during absence from class due to illness, diabetes care, or medical appointments. So when they have that gap of time. So this is important for them to have that, and what it's affecting is their ability to learn because there is that gap of not having that instruction. So I put a bunch of these in here. You guys are welcome to look over them. Here's one that talks specifically about the school nurse, and all school staff members will follow the student's individualized school health care plan. And so the area of difficulty to me was the operation of a major body function, which is the endocrine system. And that is what is related to the diagnosis and the disease of diabetes, where the pancreas doesn't produce enough insulin. So it's related to the diagnosis, and the medical condition is why the student needs the ISHP. So there's a bunch of these that you can look at. And then what I wanted to also share is this is just a template for a student ISHP. And so we have templates in our department, and as you can see, the top part is just kind of the general student information. And then there is a section for the medical diagnosis and problem description, and hopefully it's written in a way that is easily understandable for everyone. There's always the symptoms to watch for, and then we have the actual healthcare action plan. So the student's going to check their blood sugar routinely at these following times, and then it's all laid out in there, very specific for that student. If they have low blood sugar, here's the plan of action. If they have a high blood sugar, again, what are you going to do? It talks about field trips and any type of schedule changes. If there's a lockdown at your school, even if you had that student in your office and you're on a lockdown and they have diabetes, what are you going to do? There's directions for you. It also talks about the event of an emergency evacuation. And then we always have student attendance on ours because, like you, nurses are always looking at students' attendance, and especially those with chronic medical conditions. We know that they do miss more school, and we just want to make sure that we're looking at that. And if we can help them to get better management of a disease that's causing them to miss a lot of school, then we want to follow up with that. So that's what the ISHP looks like. And I really appreciate you guys allowing me to come today. Again, there's my contact information.
Sue, is it possible to have a copy of this PowerPoint for our counselors as a reference?
Absolutely. And the other thing, Ari, is if you guys wanted like additional samples for, I know that that was brought up about having, certain, like the high profile things that you guys tend to get a lot of.
Yeah.
We could come up with some guides for you for that too, if that would be helpful.
I know you were very helpful with one of our counselors and the diabetic at a school, so thank you. That would be, much appreciated.
Absolutely.
Perfect. I tried to answer different questions that were coming from the chat based on what you had taught us. So, but if there are any more questions, we will definitely let you know. And we will be sharing that PowerPoint with our school counselors so that they have your contact information and also who their cluster nurses are.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Okay. So we are going to move on to our last segment of this PD. And in November, we had World Kindness Day. So we wanted to share with you some of the kindness activities that each level could try. And we are actually going to invite Diana Medina to share with us what she does in her middle school.
Hi.
It's getting there.
Okay.
And the other examples are here for you to review as well. This slide deck will be shared with you too, so that you can look at what Scripps Ranch did, and also for elementary, basically it's a online video that you could show your students. It's only 2 minutes long, and then it will be explained in the slide deck.
Take it away, Diana.
All right. So I started the kindness challenge in November and December because that's usually when the honeymoon stage is over, and attitudes and disrespect start to happen. So I wanted to make sure that I created a program where I could keep the momentum going and remind students to be respectful and be kind to each other. So next slide. So what I created was a picture frame, photo frame, where students can accept the challenge, and then they would take a picture. And at the end of when I gathered all the pictures together, I would create a PowerPoint presentation and show it during the morning announcements. This was their way of saying, yes, I will be more aware of being kind and respectful to others. And at the same time, they love seeing themselves on television. Next. Okay. Kindness is seeing the best in others when they cannot see it in themselves. Bullying prevention assemblies. This one is when I organized it usually in October, towards the end of October, so that I can begin the kindness challenge in November and December. And some of the resources or agencies that I used were the Tariqa Visa Foundation, Kaiser Permanente, Someone Like Me, and now I believe it's called Don't Forget to Click Like. Don't forget to like. The U.S. Attorney's Office will come out and do a bullying presentation. And of course, I would go into the classrooms and do a guidance lesson using the second step curriculum, along with an intern if I had one. Next, here are some of the pictures that we had. Next. The Someone Like Me is on the left, and then we have the counseling intern do the classroom presentation as well. On the day that we held the presentation, we also had a lunch activities where we would have students sign that they would either be, they would be part of the solution, and the Eagles would speak up against bullying. So they would sign the poster, and we would have that display in the hallway as a reminder that they would be kind to each other and not bully each other. Next. The photo challenge accepted. Well, next. Here a little more. And usually I would go there in the morning, go out there with the picture frame so that students could take pictures. I would allow them to use their own phone and take pictures as well. So then they would be sending them to each other. And so I would also, during passing periods, I would walk around with the picture frame. So I was walking around as a bulletin board to be kind to each other, especially during passing period when they tend to sometimes not be so kind. So it was just a constant reminder of having to be kind to each other. And of course, some of them would love it. And then they would say, can I take a picture? Of course you can. Okay, next. Caught you being kind. The Culture Being Kind, I wanted to make sure that I had something where not only were teachers recognizing students to, whenever they were being kind, but that students had the opportunity to recognize other students for being kind. So what we created was a Caught You Being Kind ticket, and we put some in every single classroom in the library, the main office, counseling center. And whenever someone was being caught being kind, they would give the ticket to fill it out, explaining why they were being kind or why they were giving the ticket. And then they would give it to the person. The person would then deposit it in a drop box placed in the library, main office, or counseling center. And on Fridays, when we had Fun Friday, ASB was in charge of this activity. I did not do this all by myself. It took a lot of collaborative effort and work with a lot of people to be able to get this done. So ASB on Fun Fridays would then get the ticket, the box, and raffle, pull out a name, and they would either raffle a gift card, which was provided by admin, gift baskets, or even a ticket that they would get something from the ASB store. Okay, next. The poetry contest. I worked with the librarian, Miss A, and this is how she would decorate the library. Next. And what we would do is just hold a poetry contest, whatever it meant to them. And they were able to submit their entries. At the end, we would have a celebration for anyone who participated. They would be provided with a certificate of participation, along with, and we also had an opportunity as an open mic where they had the opportunity to read their poems to other students. And this celebration was usually held during lunchtime. We had an ice cream social or pizza, and they loved it. Also, what we did was that during the morning announcements, with the students' permission, we were able to read their poems out loud. So it kind of kept the momentum going every single day or every week about kindness. Next. We also participated in the Channel 933, Thank You to Our Troops. And this one I worked with the past mentor. Channel 933, next. Channel 933 would hold, it was called the Kramer and Gina's Big Thank You to Our Troops. Our first year, our goal was small. We are a small school, we're about 400 students, and our goal was 150. Our second year, we pushed ourselves and we made the goal 500 letters. But we opened it up to the families and community this time. So we were able to reach our goal of 500 letters and able to deliver. I've been looking to see if they're gonna do it, if they still have this option, but I don't think they are because of COVID. But it's something we can do when we go back and if they offer that again. Next. Appreciation station. This also worked with our past mentor, where we would have students write letters of appreciation to teachers, any staff member on campus. We would have a list of all staff members. So they were able to write a note to others, to staff or to other students. Yes, they were screened. We wanted to make sure that there were kind letters, letters of appreciation. And then they were delivered during their 6th period class. Now, I worked with the past mentor in setting up the table and having the station outside, but it was actually ASB who went out and delivered the notes to students and staff. Okay, next. The Kindness Interactive Competition. Our past mentor and I worked on this. So teachers were to create an activity that they would have posted on their door. This is just one example. How kind are you? And then they would go and write a little note, or if they caught somebody being kind, they were able to go in there and write the note as well. So as they're walking into the classroom, it was just a constant reminder of, to be kind to others. Next. The food drive. This was going to happen last year when I pushed into March, the Culture Being Kind, and we didn't actually get a chance to do it. But the food drive would also be another opportunity to be able to for students to participate and remind them that there's something bigger than in a community. The weekly and daily kindness challenge was something that we did. Next. where they were given a challenge for the week. This is an example of what we're doing this week. This year, this school year. So they get a challenge for the week, help chores without being asked, or another one is reach out to 15 to 20 classmates or 10 classmates that you don't normally speak to, just so that they can keep the communication open, or give 10 to 15 compliments to someone this week, only positive comments. And also a daily challenge, use happy emojis, tell a family member that you love them, smile, it's contagious. And what I've been doing is I've been sending them out in Remind this year, just to kind of get the students involved, but not only the students, but families as well. Okay, next. And when we started the kindness challenge, one of our teachers then decided to, hey, not only can they, students be kind to others, but themselves, but also to the school and the community and earth. So they went out and they picked up trash around campus, and this is one of the classes that participated. So it kind of kept the momentum going as well. Next. And from this, the I Am Beautiful campaign started. I was not responsible for this. It was students and a teacher. And I just started seeing posters all around campus. And I was like, what is going on? And so I reached out to students who I saw were putting up the posters, and they told me, we started the I Am Beautiful campaign. And they just started posting putting the posts. They were creating them during lunchtime with one of their teachers. And they were just putting them all over campus, in the restroom, in the cafeteria, just as a constant reminder that, they're beautiful. Next. And this is what we're rolling out this year so far, and others are pending. But if with a weekly and daily kindness challenge, that's just a calendar that I created. Yeah, can you click on that, please? A calendar that I created to share with teachers so they can post on their Google Classroom. They can either take a screenshot and post it for the week, or if they want to individually post it on a daily basis, then they can post it on a daily basis. We're posting it on our Google Classroom as well on a daily basis. This is just an example. Can we go back? The kindness poetry. That is the one that I will be holding, spreading kindness. And elementary, that is the criteria for the elementary. Okay, and then the culture being kind, virtual shout out. If we can use tickets in the classroom, then teachers can go in and fill out a slide. I caught, so-and-so being kind because of this reason from someone. Can you go to the third slide? Yes. Okay, here's an example. And then at the end, what you can do is just put a PowerPoint presentation together and present it to the whole school as, students being kind or staff catching students. Students can also participate. I created a Google form where it states their name and then who they caught being kind, the reason for that, and then it'll give it to me in a spreadsheet, and then we can go ahead and share it on here. Okay.
That's pretty clever, Diana.
Let me go back. And then the kindness challenge, of course, they can take their own picture and insert the picture. And then we did this for the Red Ribbon Week as a pledge that they would be drug-free. I did not include a picture of that in here. But they would then share it with me, and then we could create a slideshow of that they're pledging to be kind. Okay. And then that's it. Does anyone have any questions?
Wow, great job. That was amazing. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Diana, would you be okay if people contacted you, if they would like to do some of what you did at their school sites once we go back to brick and mortar?
Yes, of course.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So it is now 2:28, and we are going to be wrapping up our PD for today. We really hope that it's something that was very useful for you. We do try to make sure that it is something relevant, and it is something that you could actually, go back and use. So we do have some resources that you will be able to see on your slide deck. And just so that you know what school is Diana at, is coming up. Diana's last name is Medina. Diana Medina, and her school, she is now at Logan Memorial Education Academy?
Campus.
Campus. Campus, but she was at Memorial last year.
I just want to highlight, as a reminder of these resources, we update them almost every week, if not monthly. I know the weekly Counselor Connection, if you are not receiving it, please let us know. It is updated weekly. And so we just wanted to offer that friendly reminder that these are resources for you. We will also be adding the presentations for today on the weekly Counselor Connection, if not this week, when we come back. So you have multiple sources of where to pull the information.
Can I just plug into the high school counselor folks? The Promise Scholarship is now available for students to apply for the fall of 2021. That is a message from Andriana. So
and that information is in the Counselor Connection. So make sure you guys read the Counselor Connection. We'll stick around if you have a couple questions, but other than that, thank you for being here and have a great break.
Thank you.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
See you on in November 30. Whew.
Thank you. Happy
Thank you
Thanksgiving.
guys for joining and staying safe.
My Sharon.
Bye, Dave. Mwah. MC, should we play MC Hammer on the way out?
Yeah, put it on.
Okay. Patience hates me, but I will.
I don't hate you. I just want
I know. I played. I'll stop because we may have questions.
Yeah, somebody was asking who to contact if they're not getting Counselor Connection.
And we'll save the chat and we'll get them set up.
Oh,
thank you, everyone.
Because Heather is brand new. That's why.
Happy break. See you later. Hasta luego. Hasta diciembre. Feliz Dia de Gracias. Shelly's like, this is why I did not take Spanish from Mrs.
Yeah, you talk Cabo Spanish. You talk Cabo Spanish?
I taught the best Spanish in the world. Not only did I teach Spanish, I taught the cha-cha, I taught the tango, and we made piñatas because why wouldn't you?
Right. I love that.
Yes, ask a question. Go for it. I'll stop.
Okay, I unmuted myself. I just have a quick question. I kind of brought it up in conversation with a fellow counselor recently, and I just wanted some information or some clarity, I guess. I was wondering what prompted the change to Edgenuity iHigh courses to no longer allow the extension of a course. So it actually has to end at the quarter for students to earn an F and then restart it again if they don't complete with a new request.
I know there are special considerations given for special populations. I don't know if it was just students with disabilities with that. That has been the case that the student had to finish for a little while. I don't know if they're just trying to mandate it now. Unique Johnson would be the person that you're going to want to ask the specifics to, because I don't know any change of policy, because at Mira Mesa the students had to get an F. So I'm sorry, I don't have that answer, Jessica. Please reach out to Unique. Okay.
Yeah, it's concerning because I have, like, let's say I have a handful of students who, were in English almost maybe, they're at like 60, just right before the 60% for a D, and then the quarter ends and they have to start over from scratch, and now they have an F for the third time in that
No,
class.
totally understand.
I
Now, do
just-
these
yeah.
students have like IEPs or anything, or are they general
No,
population?
they're
Okay.
general population.
Okay, so that make sure you mention that in the email, because like I said, at Mira Mesa, that was common practice for our teachers to institute the F if they didn't finish. So if it's a change in policy, for sure she would know, because she's the one that makes the policies. But make
Got
sure
it.
that you do mention that it's a general education student that you are concerned about.
Fantastic, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions? Do you think the people went off to lunch?
Yeah, there's nobody live. I mean, they might be there, but not like. We can end it unless somebody else. Oh.
Our groups stay on, but yes, go ahead and you can start saying
Bye,
thank you, no thank you. Bye, thank you.
Monica,
Bye.
no. You want to stop recording?